The dusk settled heavy over the land, painting the world in bruised purple and gold. The wind was tired, dragging dust across the yard, rattling the dry leaves in the cottonwoods. The only sound was the slow creak of the porch swing, moving back and forth in the empty evening. Clara sat on the steps, her arms wrapped around her knees, watching the last light fade. She was waiting for something. Maybe for the pain to ease, maybe for the courage to speak. The house behind her was quiet, the windows glowing with lamplight. She could hear the rancher inside, humming low as he finished his supper. She pressed a hand to her hip, wincing. The ache had been there for days now, deep and sharp, growing worse with every step. She'd tried to hide it, tried to tell herself it would pass. But tonight, the pain was different. Hot, angry, refusing to be ignored. A door opened. Boots thudded on the porch. Will the rancher stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face lined by sun and worry. He paused when he saw her, concern flickering in his eyes. "You all right, Clara?" His voice was gentle, but it carried in the stillness. She tried to smile, but it faltered. I don't know." Her voice was thin, almost lost in the wind. He sat beside her, close but not too close. "You've been quiet all day. Something's wrong." She looked away, shame burning in her cheeks. "It's not healing." "Down there," she whispered, barely able to say the words. "I thought it would, but it's worse. I'm scared, Will." He was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling between them. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain that never came. Will's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, his touch steady. "Let me help, please." She hesitated, fear and embarrassment warring in her eyes. But the pain was too much. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Just be careful, please." He led her inside, the house warm and safe against the gathering dark. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. Will fetched a lamp, set it on the table, and knelt beside her. "Show me where it hurts," he said, voice low. Clara lifted her skirt, revealing a wound on her thigh. Red, swollen, angry. The skin was hot, the edges raw and weeping. Will's breath caught. He'd seen cuts and scrapes, but this was different. Infection, maybe worse. He looked up, saw the fear in her eyes. "How long's it been like this?" She shook her head, voice breaking. "A week, maybe more. I thought it would heal, but it just keeps getting worse." The lamp flickered, shadows dancing on the walls. Will's hands shook as he cleaned the wound, trying not to show his worry. The infection was spreading, the skin around it turning dark. He knew what that meant. If it reached the bone, he forced himself to stay calm. "You should have told me sooner, Clara." She looked away, shame and pain twisting her face. "I was scared. I didn't want you to see. I didn't want to be a burden." He shook his head, voice rough. "You're not a burden. Not ever." The silence grew heavy, the world outside fading to darkness. Will wrapped her wound, his mind racing. He knew he had to act fast. If he didn't, she might not see morning. The wind howled, rattling the windows. The night pressed in, thick with fear and questions. Tension hung in the air, sharp as a knife. Will sat by Clara's side, the lamp's glow painting her face in gold and shadow. He could see the pain in her eyes, the way she tried to hide it behind a brave smile. He wanted to say something to make it better, but the words wouldn't come. He cleaned the wound again, hands gentle, heart pounding. The infection was bad, worse than he'd feared. The skin was hot, the flesh angry and swollen. He could smell the sickness, sharp and sour. He'd seen men lose limbs to wounds like this. He'd seen worse. Clara gripped the edge of the bed, knuckles white. "Will it get better?" she whispered, voice trembling. He hesitated, not wanting to lie. "I don't know, but I'm going to do everything I can." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to think I was weak." Will shook his head, voice rough. "You're not weak, Clara. You're the strongest person I know." She looked at him, searching his face for doubt. "What if it doesn't heal? What if I lose my leg? What if I—" Her voice broke, fear spilling out in a rush. He squeezed her hand, steady and warm. "You're not going anywhere. Not if I can help it." But something about her eyes told him there was more. A secret she was holding back. The way she flinched when he touched her. The way she kept glancing at the door. He wrapped her wound tight, trying to keep the infection from spreading. He boiled water, mixed herbs, did everything he could remember from years of watching his mother tend the sick. But the fever climbed, burning in her skin, stealing her strength. The wind carried a warning he couldn't ignore. Every time the house creaked, Will's heart jumped. He kept thinking of the old stories, of wounds that wouldn't heal, of women who vanished in the night, of men who came looking for what wasn't theirs. He sat by the window, rifle across his knees, eyes on the darkness outside. He wondered if someone would come for Clara, if the wound was more than just an accident, if there was danger waiting in the night. Clara drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams feverish and wild. She called out for her mother, for help, for mercy. Will wiped her brow, whispered comfort, tried to anchor her to the world. He thought about what would happen if he failed, if the infection spread, if she didn't wake up. The thought twisted in his gut, sharp and cold. He remembered the first time he saw her, standing in the sunlight, laughing, alive. He remembered the way she made the house feel less empty, the way her voice filled the silence. He couldn't lose her, not now. The night stretched on, every minute heavy with fear. Will checked her wound again, saw the red creeping higher, the skin turning dark. He knew he was running out of time. He knelt beside her, voice breaking. "You have to fight, Clara. You have to stay with me." She opened her eyes, pain and fear and hope all tangled together. "I'm trying, Will. I'm trying." The wind howled, the lamp flickered, and the world waited for what would come next. The night felt endless. Will sat by Clara's side, counting her breaths, watching the fever burn in her cheeks. He whispered her name, again and again, as if the sound alone could keep her anchored to the world. Just before dawn, her breathing changed. It grew shallow, then ragged. Will's heart hammered. He pressed a cool cloth to her brow, desperate. "Stay with me, Clara. Please. Don't go." She stirred, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she looked lost. Then she saw him, and a weak smile flickered across her lips. "You didn't leave," she whispered. "Never," he said, voice thick. "I promised." He knew he had to do something more. The infection was winning. He remembered an old remedy, honey and herbs, packed into the wound. It was a risk, but he had nothing left to lose. He mixed the poultice, hands shaking, and pressed it gently to her thigh. She gasped, tears springing to her eyes, but she didn't pull away. "Just a little longer," he murmured. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known." The sun crept over the horizon, painting the world in pale gold. The fever broke with the dawn. Clara's skin cooled, her breathing eased. She slept, deep and dreamless, while Will kept watch, hope blooming in his chest. When she woke, the pain was still there, but the heat was gone. She looked at Will, wonder in her eyes. I think it's better," he smiled, relief flooding through him. "You did it, Clara. You fought." She reached for his hand, her grip weak but sure. "I couldn't have done it alone. You stayed. You cared. You saw me, even when I was at my worst." He squeezed her hand, his own eyes shining. "You're not alone. Not ever." As the days passed, Clara healed. The wound closed, the fever faded. She moved slow, but her spirit was strong. She helped Will with chores, her laughter returning, her eyes bright with life. Neighbors came by, bringing bread and stories. They welcomed Clara, never asking about the scar on her thigh, never judging. She found a place among them, her past no longer a secret, but a mark of survival. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Clara stood on the porch, looking out at the land. Will joined her, quiet and steady. She leaned into him, her voice soft. "Thank you for not turning away, for being horrified but not afraid, for helping me heal." He wrapped his arm around her, his voice gentle. "You taught me what real courage looks like, Clara. You reminded me that sometimes the hardest thing is to look at the pain and stay anyway." The wind moved slow across the land, carrying the promise of new beginnings. The silence was no longer empty, but full of hope. And as the stars blinked awake, Will and Clara knew that even the deepest wounds could heal, and that sometimes the greatest gift was simply to be there, to look, to care, and to stay. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, tell me in the comments, and make sure you're here tomorrow. Another story is waiting.